I'm very much speaking from the front line. I'm both a choreographer and dancer, and I'm also a co-founder of Freedom in the Arts. And I'm going to start with something hopeful, but then I'm going to go into like what's really going on. I'm going to tell it to you straight. So what's needed is an approach to the arts that brings back impartiality. Freedom in the Arts launched a manifesto just as the election was announced earlier this year. We want to protect artistic freedom and support arts organisations to end the culture of bullying. And we want to restore impartiality so that individuals, artists and audiences are free to express themselves. And we want to ensure cultural funding and support bodies deliver impartiality with the arm's length principle. We've asked that artistic excellence must be the guiding principle in the arts, and we ensure excellence is centred over identity. And we want an arts funding system that centres the health of the sector over instrumentalism and reduced expenditure on arts administration and invest more in arts production. And we want to strengthen artists' legal protection for a fairer arts sector. So, what's happening in the arts? There's a culture of intolerance, of bullying, of censorship and deplatforming. It's really happening out there. What's also happening is a big climate of self-censorship. There's a range of issues you can be attacked for. The big three are sex realism versus transphobia, Martin Luther King colourblind approach versus BLM anti-racism, and then the one that we've had for just under a year is the gulf between Palestine and Israel. But there's more than that. There's a whole list of approved and thus disapproved stances, and I'm going to read them out because they're quite fun. Trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary standards. Fuck the Tories. That's kind of, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that one in the next 6 weeks. Capitalism is bad, anti-colonialisation, free Palestine, sex work is work, climate change isn't just real, we need to centre everything we do around it. To be anti-racist is to admit that you're racist. Affirmative practices are the norm. A non-meritocracy, anti-excellence, anti-skill, anti-expertise, accessibility. Community engagement. Notice no definition of community. There are others, sub-sections, also powerful. Anti-meat, pro-vegan. Collaborative, non-hierarchical structures to making art, thus collectives, but they're not true. A lack of understanding of governance and due process. A lack of understanding of the law. Good side, bad side. So my own story is I was a company director. I changed my company to a charity in order to become regularly funded by the Arts Council. I was one of their coveted NPOs, a regularly funded non-national portfolio organisation. I was 10 days away from the premiere of probably my biggest work ever, Birmingham-based contemporary version of Romeo and Juliet, which I'd spent 5 years researching, embedded with the police, embedded in primary schools in difficult areas of inner city Birmingham, and working with gangs. 10 days before the premiere, I invited the very young dancers, professionals, not students, professionals, to my house, because I felt that in the COVID rules, there was a sort of sense of unease in the studio. After about midnight, they'd drunk a lot of wine, they asked me what my next work was, and I was well on the way, 2 years into preparing a show based on Virginia Woolf's Orlando. Orlando starts a man and whips through 500 years of British history and becomes a woman halfway through. At this point, they said, well, you have to employ a trans dancer. I said, well, I don't know, actually. It just has to be somebody fantastic. No, it has to be a trans dancer. I said, well, how does that work? Do they think they're men, but they play female? Or, isn't that a bit complicated? An argument ensued. I defended women's rights, saying that if you completely strip the definition of women to include men, there are dangerous and awful consequences. For this, I was put under 3 months of investigations, and by the end, I was so ill, I decided to resign in order to reclaim my freedom. So, after that, I set up a new dance company But I started getting more and more people contacting me on a weekly basis, artists being cancelled, bullied, intimidated. There was only so much I could do under my own name, so along with Denise Farmy, who was here yesterday and had been bullied out of her job at the Arts Council despite her considerable 15 years experience, we set up Freedom in the Arts. I now see a lot of cases. We've supported over 50 artists and arts workers in the past year running theatre. So I want to give you kind of a few examples of the cases that I'm dealing with. I have a curator who called a work of art by its official title, which includes a racial slur, in an internal meeting at her workplace. The complaint was made for racism and she was put through 3 months of investigation. She has finally left her place of employment, sadly. Our principal requested feedback to a new anti-racism policy, and a long-standing member of a conservatoire teaching staff replied in an email to the principal that he believed in MLK, colourblind approach, and that actually the issues in music that they were facing were to do with poverty and class. This email was leaked. Within 24 hours there was a student boycott. The man has not been able to return to his workplace, and we're now sort of supporting him through some really serious legal processes. An actress, quite well known, was waiting for her location call to start film that she'd been signed on contract for 3 months. Eventually at 5 o'clock, her agent phones and says, "I'm sorry, you've been sacked." She pushed harder and found out why she was sacked before even starting her first day. Somebody in hair and makeup had complained about a tweet she had made 2 years previously objecting to puberty blockers, a view now completely vindicated by the Cass report. A respected theatre director was bullied into making a public apology for liking a tweet by Julie Bindel on X. We've also got cases just last week, and there should be one coming out soon, of Arts Council and Creative Scotland staff actively bullying, harassing and sanctioning artists that they're meant to be supporting. These people that are working in the funding bodies have not been sacked. So events are cancelled, ideas are censored, agents pull out. There's also the silent ghosting. An actress who approached me said, "This is so bizarre. I'm getting no calls, no emails, and I've not even said one thing." Clearly, they saw her intelligence and cancelled her in advance. The status of the artist seems to have never been lower. We have to make work that our overlords see fit to platform, but it must fit within a tiny ideological framework. We have no autonomy, be it by the funders who skew the system and then police its enforcement of ideology through IPSOs, which are investment principal support organisations, or through the programmers, directors and curators who choose work to suit their theme, often only with the approval now of the CEO or even the board, I've heard. They're not ideas-led, and they're not even interested in the individual voice or vision of the artist. Now, I also want to tell you what's going on in arts training. So, they've decolonised contemporary dance. You no longer get taught ballet, which makes it very hard for me to do my job. For example, I had a Laban dancer who had been given a first, and we were working in the studio, and I suddenly realised I was teaching a duet, that there were issues going on, and I sort of stopped and said, what's going on here? Are you okay? He had never, in his entire 4-year training, learned partner work. One of the things that I would expect to be sort of working with a professional dancer, at least have had to have experienced it. A teacher, I know, in dance was dismissed following making a joke in class that a student had found offensive. It was investigated, it was found not to be offensive, but she was still sacked, and then another job was rescinded because of this dismissal. Accusations and complaints are being made for behaviour by expert teachers that are perfectly normal, human, and reflect reality. Staff that question are identified, put under long investigations, and often let go under redundancy packages. We're losing our skilled practitioners and our independent thinkers, and those who stand up to bullying groupthink. It is an extremely stressful environment to be part of. You're kind of waiting for your denouncement or your silent cancellation, and trust is very low. One arts producer told me it is an atmosphere of fear and loathing. It seems that the arts have a management class who invented complex and Byzantine complaints and grievances processes that justify their jobs, their salary, and their existence. What's the outcome? What does this art look like under all these conditions? Will newly graduated students have the skills to make the work, or will the work decline in quality to suit the skill base? I think this is already happening. I had dancers who can't cope with ballet classes. I had the graduate, like I said, who'd never done partner work. We've got opera singers who can't read music. We've got actors coming out of drama school who can't verbalise Shakespeare. My art form is highly pedagogic. It's teacher to teacher, body to body, style to style. You only need to wipe out one generation of artists and we lose those skills. What do the audiences think? Underlying all of this, I think, is a huge disregard to audiences. I think there's a spirit even of contempt towards audiences. Those who don't understand the subsidised sector don't realise that getting audiences doesn't matter. No matter how many tickets you sell, you're still getting your subsidy. The model that subsidised art nurtured the best talent and the best ideas and was able to take risks and move arts forward has ended. This talent and ideas would then be able to enter the commercial sector and bring great art to the widest audience and then make back on the return on investment. Great artists take decades to mature. One doesn't just start out making a great work or even a commercial work. There is no direct formula. If there was, we'd all be doing it. So now we've got two entirely different sectors. We have a subsidised sector that doesn't care for its audiences, and we have a commercial sector where actually they're struggling to break even when they sell out on musicals. A lot of this has been incentivised by the funding system, and there is a control going on through curatorial and programming. So, what's to be done? A lot of the grassroots are suffering, and I think that would be one place to really start to kind of invest long term in. It's all being done on a project-only basis, and so things fall apart very quickly. Arts in state schools has radically declined, and the private sector have really seen an opportunity there to offer as part of their education offer. So back to the freedom of the arts manifesto. We need to protect artistic freedom, and artistic excellence must be the guiding principle in the arts. It's got to be centred over identity, and we've got to repeal mechanisms that centre identity over talent and excellence. We need to focus on excellence in arts learning over engagement to nurture quality and talent.